ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
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 ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय.
So, welcome you all for discussing the 10th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Last class we finished the 9th chapter, Bhishma's prayers. And now we started with the 10th chapter, and we have seen the first 6 verses, which spoke about Yudhishthira Maharaj's rule, his kingdom. Okay, and the 4th and 5th verse. Okay, the 4th and 5th verse spoke about Yudhishthira Maharaj's rule and the result. Okay, basically how his rule was so glorious and what was the result. Right, we saw how the rivers, oceans, hills, mountains paid their tax quota in full. Means they were giving everything that is required for the material as well as spiritual upkeep of its citizens. Okay, and Srila Prabhupada specifically makes a point that we must look into the defects of modern civilization by comparison here, and should follow in the footsteps of Maharaj Yudhishthira to cleanse man and wipe out anachronisms. Okay, so by comparison, we can understand that monarchy is better than this democratic government, where everything is basically it's anachronic, means something that is no longer suitable or relevant to modern times. So people think that democracy is what is proper in the current age, but Srila Prabhupada specifically mentions that it's anachronism, means it's not applicable to this age anymore. Okay. Start with verse 7, and this is when Krishna starts for Dwaraka. Okay, and this chapter is basically about separation from Krishna. Okay, and next chapter is about association with Krishna. Okay, so departure of Lord Krishna from Dwaraka. So the mood that the Hastinapur Vasis felt during separation from Krishna is expressed in this chapter. And the next chapter basically is association with Krishna, when they meet after a long time of separation. So that's entrance into Dwaraka. Okay, so that's the 10th and 11th chapter. So we understand that this Vipralamba and Sambhoga. Okay, so these are the two aspects which are spoken about in these two chapters. So seeing the breakup 7 to 19, we'll speak about Krishna starts for Dwaraka. Okay, so he's starting. Okay, he's not yet left Hastinapur. So 9 to 14 will express the intense affliction due to separation from Krishna, and 15 to 19, Krishna is honored. Okay, during his departure. And from 20 to 31, we will see that the ladies of Hastinapur then go to the rooftops and then they'll speak about Krishna. Okay, they adore, they glorify Krishna. And finally, Krishna will acknowledge their glorification. And from 30 to 36 is discussed how Krishna departs from Hastinapur. So, text 7. Sri Hari, Lord Shri Krishna, resided at Hastinapur for a few months to pacify his relatives and please his own sister. Okay. Yeah, the 7th and 8th verse is basically what is transpiring or what is happening in Hastinapur. Okay. Which is what is discussed here. Srila Prabhupada writes that there are basically a couple of things which Krishna wanted to do during his stay. Even after the battle of Kurukshetra is over, still he remained at Hastinapur to make sure that some things happen or he conduct some pastimes. One of them was to oblige the Pandavas to establish them as the ruler of the whole world. Okay. Then definitely to show mercy to Bhishma Deva, as we discussed in the last chapter, and to please his sister Subhadra and to pacify all his relatives. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada writes here that Subhadra, sister of Lord Shri Krishna, was especially to be pacified because she lost her only son Abhimanyu, who was just married. Okay, and we also saw last time that Gandhari also lost her sons. Okay, but specifically because Subhadra is related to Lord Shri Krishna, he stayed there for her. And God is always pleased to satisfy his devotees in any capacity. Only his devotees can play the parts of his relatives. The Lord is absolute. Afterwards, when the Lord asked permission to depart and the king gave it, the Lord offered his respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira by bowing down at his feet, and the king embraced him. After this, the Lord, being embraced by others and receiving their obeisances, got into his chariot. Okay, so actually, if you see in the 8th chapter, Krishna was about to depart. Okay, and then Kunti Maharani comes and prays to the Lord. And after that, Yudhishthira Maharaj again requests him to stay for some more time. And then Krishna obliges. So this, actually in the previous verse it's mentioned that Krishna stayed here to oblige the Pandavas. So that's the obligation which Yudhishthira Maharaj requested him to stay there and show mercy to Bhishma Dev. Okay, so this is also mentioned. So it basically means that when Krishna started previously, okay, it was just part of his pastime. Okay, so that that affection or the prayers of Queen Kunti can be spoken, because it is Krishna's plan that he must give mercy to Bhishma Dev also. So then after that, when Yudhishthira Maharaj asks him to stay there for some more time, then the Lord agrees. Okay. And then he shows his mercy to Bhishma Dev and also to Subhadra and other relatives. So the Lord takes pleasure when some of his devotees accept him as less important in terms of love. So here we see that Krishna paid his respects to Maharaj Yudhishthira by bowing down at his feet. From this materialistic or from this Mahabharata's point of view, Maharaj Yudhishthira was elder. He was senior. He was born before Krishna. Okay, so to follow the social custom, Krishna bowed down to Maharaj Yudhishthira. And then after this, the Lord embraced others, means Arjuna and Bhima, who were almost of the same age. And he received obeisances from Nakula and Sahadeva because they were younger than him. And Srila Prabhupada specifically makes his point here that the impersonalist cannot enter into the supernatural roles played by the devotee of the Lord. Okay. So, and in context to what Srila Prabhupada writes here, that the Lord takes pleasure when some of his devotees accept him as less important in terms of love. Okay. For the impersonalist, the form of the Lord is less important for them. Okay. For the impersonalist, the form of the Lord is, for the impersonalist, when we speak about the Brahmavadis, then it's the same. It's the same level. Okay. And for those Mayavadis, for the Mayavadis, the form of the Lord is actually an illusion. Okay, and the impersonalist idea is to merge into Brahman and become himself as on the same level as God. Okay, so on the same level as God or more than God, like this. So they also tend to make the Lord as less important, the Lord's form as less important. But from the devotee's point of view, the Lord takes pleasure when some of his devotees accept him as less important in terms of love. But when the impersonalist accepts the Lord as less important by minimizing his form, Krishna is not pleased by that. Okay, so it's not about minimizing the form, but out of love, Krishna can take any position. Okay, it can be a lower position, higher position, equal position, any of the position Krishna can take if it is to facilitate the pastime with his devotees. Okay, otherwise, the Lord is independent, he is Swaranga. Yeah, text 9 and 10. At that time, Subhadra, Draupadi, Kunti, Uttara, Gandhari, Dhritarashtra, Yuyutsu, Kripacharya, Nakula, Sahadeva, Bhimsen, Dhaumya, and Satyavati all nearly fainted because it was impossible for them to bear separation from Lord Krishna. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada says, Lord Shri Krishna is so attractive for the living beings, especially for the devotees, that it is impossible for them to tolerate separation. The conditioned soul under the spell of illusory energy forgets the Lord. Otherwise, he cannot. Okay. In this particular statement, the conditioned soul it's impossible for them to tolerate separation. Okay, for the living entities, okay, it is impossible. Living entities who are originally our constitutional position, we were with Krishna. Okay, and for us, we were all devotees. Okay, when we are with Krishna in the spiritual world, obviously devotional service was being performed. Okay, and it is impossible for them to tolerate separation. Prabhupada makes this statement in this line. But then he also says the conditioned soul under the spell of illusory energy forgets the Lord. Otherwise, he cannot. So now this statement can give a doubt, saying that is illusory energy responsible? Okay, is it responsible really for the conditioned soul to forget the Lord? Okay, is it responsible? But actually this is not the case. The proper understanding is that the living entity himself is responsible and the illusory energy just facilitates Okay, his irresponsibility. The irresponsibility lies with the living entity, and the illusion energy just facilitates that. Okay, so the cause, the actual cause, the real cause is the living entity's desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, and that is facilitated by the illusory energy of the Lord. Okay, and if the illusory energy is not there, okay, if it does not cover the living entity, then it is not possible for the living entity to forget Krishna or to tolerate separation from him. So now, see, in our situation, okay, or in a conditioned soul situation, it looks as if, or rather, it is, no, we are able to tolerate the separation from him. We think this world is good, okay, we have to struggle so much to remember Krishna, to think about Krishna like that. So it seems very natural for us to be separated from him, okay, but this is there because we are covered by the illusion energy of the Lord. Okay, once the illusion energy of the Lord is uncovered, then it is impossible for the living entity to tolerate separation because they are intimately related with Krishna. Even in our conditioned state, we are intimately connected with him, but illusion energy just makes us forget that principle. So connection is always there. It does not mean that when the living entity comes to the material world, the connection is lost. Or no, the wire has been cut. It's not like that. Okay, the connection is there. The connection is eternally there. Okay, the sambandha, when Krishna is eternal, the living entity is eternal, the sambandha between Krishna and the living entity is also eternal. It is never cut. Okay, it's always there. That is also eternal. But because of the illusion energy, we forget the Lord, or we forget our connection. So it's basically forgetfulness of the Lord and not disassociation from him. Okay, and also this illusion energy does not associate with the living entity also. It just covers the living entity. Okay, so that also we can discuss later. But the point to understand here is that conditioned soul is suffering in this material world or is under the illusory energy because that is his desire. It's not that the illusory energy is the cause. The illusion energy is just covering, okay, to facilitate his forgetfulness. But after his separation from Vrindavana, and the innocent ruler cowherd boys, girls, ladies and others, they all felt shock throughout their lives. Yeah. So it's like this, no? If we have intense affection or love for somebody, then each and every moment we remember or we think about that person. Okay. And each and every moment that the person is not there with us, there is affliction, there is suffering because of that separation. So in the case of the Vrindavan Vasis, that each and every thought, their whole consciousness and each and every thought was pervaded only with Krishna, his name, his form, his pastimes, like this. Okay. So for them, each and every moment suffer that separation from him was just like a shock. It was unbearable for them. Okay. Even in our lives, if someone dear to us, he expires, he passes away, or he goes to some other different place, then we also suffer. We also have some amount of suffering, you can say, suffering or some amount of miserable experience is there. Okay, but because we are not thinking about them each and every moment, and our life also, we get diverted into so many different things. Okay, so the moment of separation or the affliction due to separation comes momentarily and then it leaves. Okay, so the intensity of separation that we feel because of our separation from our mundane relatives is not that intense as the spiritual liberated devotees of Vrindavan felt when Krishna was not there. Okay, so each and every moment there is separation. Each and every moment there is distress due to separation. So when, if we are, we can think of our experiences. Whenever we have felt distress because of something like this, okay, we overcome that, or we try to overcome that. But from this Vrindavan Vasi's point of view, they never overcame it. Okay, there was never a point where Krishna left and then they were able to pacify themselves. They could never pacify themselves throughout their whole lives. Okay, because Krishna was not there. Okay, so each and every moment the separation was so intense. That's why Srila Prabhupada writes here that they all felt shock throughout their lives. And the separation of Radharani, the most beloved cowherd girl, is beyond expression. It cannot even be imagined. Okay, that's beyond expression. And he says that none of them or none of those devotees who have ever contacted the Lord with direct communion or otherwise can leave him for a moment. That is the attitude of the pure devotee. Okay. Anyone who has contacted him even once, they cannot bear the separation from him. Okay. Text 11 and 12. An intelligent person who has understood the Supreme Lord in association with pure devotees and has become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though he has heard them only once. How then could the Pandavas tolerate his separation, for they had been intimately associated with his person by seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, and sleeping, sitting, and dining with him. Okay, so there are two things which are spoken about here. So the first section, it says that an intelligent person who has understood the Supreme Lord in association with his pure devotees and has become freed from bad materialistic association can never avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though he has heard them only once. This is speaking about those who are in the material world and by the mercy of pure devotees have come to a point of pure devotional service, and they have become freed from bad materialistic association. So even those who were in the material world, okay, and who have elevated themselves to the level of having pure devotional attitude towards Krishna, even they cannot avoid hearing the glories of the Lord, even though they have heard it only once. Okay. So what to speak of the Pandavas? How could the Pandavas tolerate separation? Because they have intimately associated with him by seeing him face to face, touching him, conversing with him, speaking with him, sleeping, sitting, and dining with him throughout most of their lives. Okay. Even when the Pandavas went to the forest, Krishna used to visit them regularly. Okay. It was not that Krishna only used to come when they were in their kingdom, and when they were in the forest, he never came. Actually, he came so many times. In Vanaparva itself, in Mahabharata, it's mentioned he comes several times and he meets the Pandavas. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about attraction for hearing, about Krishna slackens attachment for material enjoyment. So he's speaking this point that one who hears the glories of the Lord, okay, who has an attraction for hearing the glories of the Lord, it automatically slackens. Slackens means loosening. Okay, the material attachment is a very tight knot. This Hridaya Granthi, we say. Granthi means a tight knot. And that tight knot, it's very, very difficult to loosen it. But just by hearing about Krishna, an attraction for hearing about Krishna, it loosens that knot. Okay, just by that process. You don't have to endeavor anything else. Okay, the Jnanis, the Yogis, they have this mechanical process where they themselves try to remove that knot, if we have to extend that analogy of knot. They themselves try to remove that knot, which is very, very difficult. Okay. But here, in the case of devotees, just by hearing about Krishna, the knot automatically becomes loosened. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about the conditioned soul, and he says, in serving the senses, he is never tired. Okay. This is the position of the conditioned soul. So a pure devotee or an unconditioned soul never gets tired by serving Krishna, but a conditioned soul, he never gets tired by serving the senses. Even though he may be tired, okay, the illusory energy perpetually forces him to do so without being satisfied. Okay, so this, the interaction, or when we get, or when someone does, or we do sense gratification, okay, then after a certain point, there is a disillusionment. Or there's a certain point we think, okay, it's so miserable, okay, but still we keep on doing sense gratification again and again because the illusory energy perpetually forces him to do so without being satisfied. Even though by doing sense gratification the living entity cannot get satisfaction, but still, this thought always goes in the mind that, oh, maybe something, if I do this, then I'll be happy. Or maybe if I do something else in a different way, then I'll be happy. Thought always keeps on going in the mind of the conditioned soul that I am not satisfied. Nobody in this whole creation has ever got satisfaction by doing sense gratification. Okay, it's an illusion. It has never happened. But everybody thinks that they can be happy by sense gratification. So in the past it has not happened. In the present it is not happening. But somehow they think in future it will happen. Okay, and that is because of the illusion energy of the Lord. So because the conditioned soul is put under that illusion, he thinks even though something which has never happened throughout the whole creation is going to happen in future, sometime in the future. Okay, so this is illusion. Okay, it has never happened, but it will happen. Especially in my case, it will happen. Okay, you're not bothered about another person, but somehow I'll get satisfaction by enjoying my senses. So this idea, this thought that keeps on coming, and even in future, no, okay, you might think, oh, I'll do something after 5 days, or I'm going to do something tomorrow, day after tomorrow, or now I'm going to do something. He does something, he's not satisfied, and you go, tomorrow, no, probably I'll be satisfied tomorrow. Probably I'll be satisfied tomorrow. Probably I'll be satisfied tomorrow. And keeps on going like that. Not even in one lifetime, but lifetimes after lifetimes after lifetimes. So throughout this 84 lakh species of life, a living entity, the conditioned soul keeps on going like this again and again in the cycle of birth and death, just because of the illusion that he thinks that he can be happy within this material world. Okay. But it is not possible. It is not possible. So there is no end to such sense gratificatory business. Okay, and the conditioned soul becomes entangled in such servitude without hope of any release. But the release is only effected by association with pure devotees. So in association with pure devotees, the illusory energy subsides. Okay, because the pure devotees are situated on the spiritual platform, in association with pure devotees, illusory energy automatically disperses. Just like you see the cloud. Cloud is there, and when a forceful wind comes, then the cloud disperses. It breaks down into pieces. Have you observed that? Okay, it happens. The cloud disperses into pieces, and then we are able to see the sun. A pure devotee is like that. By association with the pure devotee, this material cloud or the illusory energy slackens. The effect of illusory energy automatically comes down. It disperses, and then when that disperses, then the natural position of the living entity automatically comes up. Okay, it's like it's like a bulb covered with a very thick or very dark cloth or something. As soon as it's removed, naturally the bulb is already glowing. So living entity already is spiritual. He does not have to do anything. He does not have to attain anything. Just the covering has to be removed. And the illusory energy, the cover of illusory energy is removed in association of pure devotees. That is why in Kali Yuga especially, because this illusory energy is so thick, it's very, very difficult to remove it. So Sadhu Sangha is considered as the most important principle. Association of devotees is the most important principle if anyone wants to elevate himself or anyone wants to progress in spiritual life or advance in spiritual life. Association of devotees is the most important thing. Okay, because that is extremely potent to remove the illusory energy, the cover of illusory energy. Srila Prabhupada continues. He says, material society, friendship and love are all different phases of lust. Home, country, family, society, wealth and all sorts of corollaries are all causes of bondage. Which basically means these are all illusory. These are all all these relationships and all these different aspects that we have cultivated in our conditioned life is actually under the influence of the illusory energy. Okay, so therefore there are causes of bondage within this material world. And he says that as one associates with pure devotees and hears them submissively, attachment for material enjoyment slackens and attraction for hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord becomes prominent. Once this attraction begins, it goes on progressively increasing without stoppage, like fire in gunpowder. Okay, what is gunpowder? Okay, gunpowder. See, it's okay. Simple example is your matchstick. This matchstick, correct? Okay, now there's this bud in top of the matchstick. Okay, when you rub it, then fire comes up. Okay, so it's a smaller manifestation of gunpowder. So whenever you have gunpowder and once it is set to fire, okay, it does not matter, even if it's put into water, it will still burn. Okay, if you have a rope which is coated with gunpowder, okay, and then you put fire on that, even though it is in water, it will still burn and it will go like this. So it's like that example is given of fire in gunpowder. Once it started, it will not stop until the gunpowder is completely consumed. Okay. This is a small example. Okay. So, separation from Krishna is as good as personal contact. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada says here that even though the devotees were suffering, okay, we discussed in last verse, correct? Was the last verse? Yes. That the devotees, the pure devotees, even though they are separated and each and every moment, they are suffering, but still, the Lord being absolute, however, separation from Him is as good as personal contact. Okay, so from the Lord being absolute, even though one is separated from Him, still it is as good as personal contact. Okay, so just like one person relishes relationship or rasa is there, no? When Krishna is there personally with somebody, then there's exchange of relationship. There's exchange of rasa that happens. No, there's a taste in contact with Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada says the Lord being absolute, even though there's separation from him physically, he might not be present, but still, because the thought of a pure devotee is always pervaded, the consciousness of a pure devotee is always pervaded by thoughts of Krishna, and thought of Krishna is non-different from form of Krishna. So therefore, it's as good as personal contact. So in one way there is no separation, but from another point of view there is separation. So there is separation also, and there is no separation also. Okay. So due to his mature association with other pure devotees, he is not out of contact with the Lord for a moment. Okay. So this is remembrance of his form, qualities, name, fame, pastimes is so attractive for the pure devotee that he forgets all forms, qualities, names, fame and activities of the mundane world. And due to his mature association with other pure devotees, he is not out of contact with the Lord for a moment. Because whenever a devotee is in contact with another devotee, what they speak about is about Krishna. They speak about Krishna, so therefore they are never in contact from the Lord. So association with pure devotees is required for taking up devotional service. Yes, we spoke that. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, he says, without the association of devotees, bad association which causes attachment, hatred and other bad qualities will not disappear. Without the disappearance of bad qualities, a person will not become strongly attached to the pleasing qualities of the Lord. Okay, so this is important for us. Okay, that we give up all our material attachments. Then only we can become strongly attached to the pleasing qualities of the Lord. Okay, if we think that we can do some sense gratification and also cultivate some attachment for Krishna, it will never give us taste. Okay, attachment to material things. Okay, attachment to material things will not lead to a spiritual taste. And unless there's a spiritual taste, then we'll always feel bored doing devotional service. Okay, we feel it as an imposition or as a punishment because we are materially attached also. So material attachment must be given up. Okay, to have attachment to the pleasing qualities of the Lord, and that will happen, by hearing about the Lord. Okay, so ultimately it comes to the hearing principle, and I think we discussed that in this chapter or in the previous chapter that of all the processes of devotional service, hearing is the most important. Correct? Yes, we discussed that. Separation from Krishna intensifies bhakti for Krishna. So, rasa is most intense, and Krishna being absolute pervades through his name, form, qualities and pastimes in the consciousness of his pure devotees. And they agonizingly relish association and separation from Krishna. So they are not out of contact with the Lord for a moment. So both are there. Both emotions are there. There is agony because of separation from Krishna, but there is some taste or relish also because Krishna is there. Even though not in his prakat form, but in the consciousness of the devotees, Krishna is already present. And being absolute, he is there. But he is also not there. They are separated from him because he went to Dwarka. So both are there. So in one sense, the pure devotees, they have agony because they are separated from Krishna. But at the same time, there is relish also. There is taste also because Krishna is there. Not in his personal form, but through his other means, through his name, through his pastimes, like this. Text 13. All their hearts were melting for him on the pot of attraction. They looked at him without blinking their eyes, and they moved hither and thither in perplexity. Krishna is naturally attractive for all living beings because he is the chief eternal amongst all eternals. Okay. Once this relation is slightly revived, the conditioned soul at once becomes freed from the illusion of material energy and becomes mad after the association of the Lord. This association is made possible not only by personal contact with the Lord, but also by association with his name, fame, form and qualities. Okay. And Srimad Bhagavatam trains the conditioned soul to this stage of perfection by submissive hearing from the pure devotee. So again, this hearing process is very important. And for the conditioned soul who is there within this material world, this is how he starts his devotional service. when we say association with the pure devotees, it's required to dispel the illusory energy. It basically means hearing from the pure devotees. Okay. Association with pure devotee means hearing and imbibing their message. Okay. So this association is made not only by personal contact with the Lord, so that's there, but also by association with His name, fame, form, and qualities, which are all explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's mentioned here that the citizens of Hastinapur, their hearts were melting due to separation, or just with the thought that he is going to go to Dwarka. Okay. So our natural tendencies, we tend not to think of something unpleasant which can happen. It's in the conditioned soul's tendency is, if something unpleasant is going to happen, it does not like to think about it. And we know that nobody wants to talk about death. If you go out and preach and talk about death, people say, oh, why are you talking about death? It's unpleasant. Oh, nobody wants to think about it. If something can happen in the future, nobody wants to talk about it. Okay, because they don't like to hear this unpleasant thing. So materialists do that to enjoy sense gratification. They don't like to hear about death and old age. But devotees, on the other hand, are more concerned when the Lord of their life desires to leave them and go. They don't think of it when Krishna is with them. And when he leaves, or when he's about to leave, they get into perplexity. Okay, this is what mentioned here, right? So they were not thinking, maybe after 2 days Krishna will leave. That thought did not come because it's unpleasant for them to think like this. If Krishna is there, he is there. Let him be with us for eternity. That's always the thought. Because their attraction to Krishna is so intense. That is what we have been discussing in the last few verses. The devotee's attraction to Krishna is so intense that they cannot bear even a moment's separation. So they don't think of an impending separation that is going to happen and meditate on that. Because that thought itself is tasteless. It's very distressing to them. But when Krishna decides to go to Dwarka and he has to leave Hastinapur, then they get into complete perplexity. They looked at him without blinking eyes, with disbelief that, Krishna is really leaving. Is he really going to leave? So therefore, they are not even blinking their eyes. And they move hither and thither in perplexity, not knowing what to do. Because they have never thought that something like this is going to happen. Because that thought does not come in the mind because of the intense attraction to Krishna. And separation gives so much pain. And that which gives so much pain, we normally don't like to meditate or think about that. Okay, so that is, this whole pastime of Krishna leaving Hastinapur has basically thrown all the devotees into perplexity. They don't know what to do. So therefore, they are moving hither and thither, aimlessly, not understanding what they want to do in their lives. The female relatives, whose eyes were flooded with tears out of anxiety for Krishna, came out of the palace. They could stop their tears only with great difficulty. They feared that tears would cause misfortune at the time of departure. Okay. So there were hundreds of ladies in the palace of Hastinapur. All of them were affectionate to Krishna. And those ladies, who were the wives and daughters-in-law of those who died in the battlefield, never came in direct contact with Krishna. But all of them heard of him and his great activities. And thus they thought of him, talked of him, of his name, fame, etc. and became affectionate also, like those who were in direct contact. Okay. So these ladies are the examples of how one can cultivate attraction or attachment for the Lord just by hearing about him, because they never had a direct contact with the Lord. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada continues, he says, our intimate relation with Krishna can be confidentially revived by our talking of, hearing of, or remembering him. It is so done due to spiritual potency. Okay, by the spiritual potency, these things can be revived. So, first, the residents were perplexed due to Krishna's leaving. And now, they are anxious for the Lord. So, anxious for the Lord is, if Krishna is leaving, then, he should be protected. Okay, nothing should happen to him. We should control our tears so that no misfortune happens to the Lord. But then, how can misfortune happen to Krishna? He is the Lord of the goddess of fortune. So wherever he goes, fortune follows him. Okay, or he himself is the most fortunate. So there cannot be any misfortune. And they knew all this also. From philosophically speaking, they knew this. But from this aspect of rasa, it always comes up, Because of the separation, then they don't even want to cry or they don't want to shed tears because it would cause misfortune for Krishna, like this. So first they were perplexed of what would happen in their lives if Krishna leaves, and now they're anxious about Krishna, that nothing should happen to him also. No misfortune should fall on him. Okay. While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapur, different types of drums like the Mridanga, Dhola, Nagra, Dhunduri and Dundubi, and flutes like the Gomukha and other instruments like Veenas and Bheris all sounded together to show him honor. Okay, so this is done even nowadays, no? If a soldier dies or if a soldier dies in the battlefield, then this topo ki salami, right? This topo ki salami, it still happens. They do this shooting in the air, they do just to give him honor. So in those times, it used to be musical instruments. Okay. And it is also done for not only for those soldiers who have died, but whenever a great personality comes, or especially we see this in during our Independence Day celebrations or Republic Day celebrations, there are parade and other things, and we also know this. So many these things are blasted, so many things are done, so much blowing and other things happen. So this is to show honor. So this was done at that time, and people are doing this from that time onwards. Okay. Verse 16, text 16. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Kurus got up on top of the palace, and smiling with affection and shyness, they showered flowers upon the Lord. Srila Prabhupada speaks about women specifically in this whole purport, and he says that the custom of separating females from males was observed even during the days of the Mahabharata, that is more than 5,000 years ago, because Srila Prabhupada explains this in the Mohammedan period, or the idea is propagated that the male and female were not separated before, and this came only after the Islamic rule entered India. But Srila Prabhupada said it was not so, because we can understand from this verse itself that the royal ladies of the Kurus, they got up on top of the palace. Okay. And he says, the ladies were smiling there on the top of the palace, checked by shyness. This shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex, and it enhances their beauty and prestige, even if they are of a less important family, or even if they are less attractive. Okay, so it does not matter. The shyness is one thing which a woman should never lose. And then Srila Prabhupada completes the purport, and he says that the beauty of a woman in relation to their body is actually an illusion. He says the material beauty of a woman is an illusion because actually the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, etc. But because there is the association of the living spark with matter, it appears to be beautiful. No one is attracted by an earthen doll, even if it is most perfectly prepared to attract the attention of others. The dead body has no beauty. Right? So the body is dead. Doesn't matter whether it's the male body or the female body. Okay. The body is dead only because of the presence of the soul. Then there is this aspect of beauty, or else there is no beauty in a dead body. But because we are now in the darkness of ignorance, the Vedic civilization allows very restricted mixing of women and man. Because the tendency is there to associate with the opposite gender. It's always there. Because we are in the bodily concept of life. Those who are in the bodily concept of life get attracted to the bodily features of the other person or the other gender. Okay, it's always there. But one who elevates himself or who has transcended the bodily concept of life, for him, the attraction is to the other soul is through Krishna. It's not through the external body. Okay, because external body is actually, it's dead. It is dead and it is made up of all kinds of filthy matter. So, actually there is nothing attractive in the body of the opposite gender. There is nothing attractive there. But because we are in ignorance, Vedic civilization allows very restricted mixing of women and man, and that is facilitated by this shyness. So Prabhupada, and shyness is a check to the unrestricted mixing. It is nature's gift, and it must be utilized. So even though because of this bodily conception, there is attraction between the male and the female, but this shyness, this concept of shyness, basically is to check the unrestricted mixing. So it's actually the responsibility, we can say, because shyness is the nature's gift to women. It's actually the responsibility of the woman to utilize that shyness and does not attract the male form. Okay. So men don't have the nature's gift of shyness. Okay. Men are not shy. So to avoid mixing, women's role is more significant. Okay. To avoid mixing, both men and women do have to make an endeavor, but the women's role is more significant because they have this nature's gift of shyness. This is normally seen as suppressive, okay, on the women because they are the ones who have to take extra endeavor. But Srila Prabhupada is very clear in this purport regarding nature of women. So that which is natural can be naturally followed and implemented. Unnatural or artificial creates disturbance for everybody. So if shyness is natural for the women, it's natural for them to exhibit it also. Okay, and it's unnatural for them not to exhibit it or not to manifest that. Okay, so therefore that which is natural should be followed by them, and that which is unnatural or artificial, this women's independence and equality has come up a lot now. And if you speak like this, then it is thought that it is suppressive to the women. But it is not natural for them to be roaming around out like this. It's natural for them to be shy, okay, to be protected. Okay, so that which is unnatural, it creates disturbance for everybody. And as Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita, it leads to Varna Shankara. When women are not protected, it leads to Varna Shankara. And when Varna Shankara population is there in the society, then there is disturbance in the society. Okay, Varna Shankara means what? There is no Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Everything is disrupted. So when there are no different Varnas and ashramas are not in place, then people will not be able to follow their dharma. Then what to speak of elevating themselves in spiritual life? So just by this one aspect. So therefore, this shyness of women, it's a very, very important aspect. Because if that is not followed, then it's like a landslide. Something starts at the top and it keeps on gathering more mass as it comes down. Right? You know what's a landslide? At the top of the mountain, if a rock starts or some of the sand starts rolling, then as it rolls down, it gathers more and more mass. Okay, and it becomes a big it's a big mass, and then it comes down and it creates lots of natural disturbances. You're not aware of it. Okay, anyways. Or avalanche. Think of avalanche. See, in mountains, you have this snow-peaked mountains are there. Okay, and the snow sheets are just there on the mountain slope. But if because of a cyclone or because of heavy winds, there is some disturbance at the top of the mountain and the snow starts to roll, there's a big mass of snow that falls down. Okay, it gathers mass as it comes down. Okay, you might have seen that in some video or something or in the photographs. So it's like this. So shyness of women is one of the important principles. If it starts from the top, then gradually, as Arjuna said, it leads to Varna Shankara. From Varna Shankara, the Varna and Ashrama institution is completely destroyed. From there, society, the dharma is destroyed, and then elevation to spiritual consciousness becomes very difficult in a proper society. Okay, so it's a very important principle. Okay. At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, who is the intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord, took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls. And Srila Prabhupada compares that, this jewels and lace and pearls, with the modern industrial enterprise where people are now using pots of gutta parcha instead of metals like gold, silver, brass and copper. It's basically like this clay. It's like a clay. It actually comes from the tree. Okay, but it's like a clay. It's like your ceramic pots. Okay, it's like that. So they are using margarine. That's how it's pronounced. Okay, instead of pure butter, and 1/4 of the city population has no shelter. Okay, so so-called industrial enterprises create so many problems. Okay. Uddhava and Satyaki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans, and the Lord, as the master of Madhu, seated on scattered flowers, commanded them along the road. Here and there were heard the benedictions being paid to Krishna, which were neither befitting nor unbefitting, because they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. Okay, it's neither befitting nor unbefitting. And Srila Prabhupada says the benedictions were fitting in the sense that the Lord was playing the part of a human being, as if a cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Okay, so his glories, as a human being, the benedictions which are being given to him, human beings are benedicted. Okay, like this, boons are given, benedictions are spoken. May you be like this, or may you live for a long time, like this. So benedictions are there because the Lord was playing the part of a human being, so they were befitting, his position from this point of view. But they were also unfitting because the Lord is absolute and has nothing to do with any kind of material relativities. So it's both befitting as well as unbefitting. Okay. The sounds of benedictions uttered by the learned Brahmanas here and there appear to be contradictory in relation with the absolute person. But when they apply to the absolute person, they lose all contradiction and become transcendental. Okay. So, and Prabhupada gives the example of Krishna as thief and how he is glorified as Makhan Chor, even though he has stole butter. Since he is the absolute personality of Godhead, everything is applicable to him. And still, in spite of all contradictions, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. So even if he steals, he dances with girls at the dead of night, he dances with other wives of other husbands, still everything is perfect and his all contradictions are resolved. So even the benedictions which were given to him, they were also resolved because all contradictions are resolved within his personality. So it was befitting as well as non-befitting. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is glorified in select poetry, the ladies on the roof of all the houses of Hastinapur began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than hymns of the Vedas. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada's essence of this purport is here. Anything sung in praise of the Lord is Shruti Mantra. Okay. So this tells us that, and Srila Prabhupada himself writes, that the songs of Thakur Narottam Das were accepted as good as Vedic mantras by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So the writings of our acharyas, which are written in the praise of the Lord or the glories of the Lord or in line with the Vedic literatures are also to be considered as Shruti only. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads sometimes give indirect hints about the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The ladies' talk appeared to be more valuable than the learned Brahmanas' benedictions, because they are directly glorifying the Lord. So this is the next section. So from 9 to 14, we spoke about the intense separation that the devotees felt when they understood that Krishna was about to leave. From 15 to 19, then Krishna was honored. Arjuna took this umbrella. Satyaki and Uddhava were fanning him, and then this different instruments were being played in his honor like this, and the Brahmanas were giving benedictions to the Lord. So this was honoring of Krishna when he was about to leave. From 20 to 31, the ladies on the rooftop will glorify Krishna. So 20th verse discusses that their words speaking about Krishna were much better than the Vedic hymns, because the Vedic hymns, basically Srila Prabhupada writes here, right? The Vedic hymns are those which are given in the Upanishads, and they talk about the indirect glories of the Lord, that he does not have any material attraction, he does not have material qualities, his arupa, his nirguna and things like that, which are the glories of the Lord, because he is beyond the material realm. But because the ladies were speaking directly about the personality of Krishna, therefore they are more enchanting or more relishable or much better than the Vedic hymns. From 21 to 24, they'll speak about the supremacy of Krishna, how Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and then they'll say how the same Krishna, who is the Supreme Lord, he appears in this material world to engage in transcendental pastimes. And then from 28 to 30, they speak about the fortunate wives of Krishna. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives two divisions, and he says that some of the women on the rooftop, they were in Shantarasa. So they were glorifying the Lord, the supremacy of the Lord, and how he comes to this material world for performing pastimes and things like that. And some of the ladies were more attracted or are situated in Madhurya Rasa. So they were speaking about the wives of Krishna. So the lady said, here he is, the original personality of Godhead. as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature, and into him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge, as if sleeping at night, their energy suspended. So he is the original personality of Godhead. Okay. He only existed before the creation happened. Okay. And it's known to him only that all living beings merge when their energy is suspended. Okay. So he was there in the past before the creation. Okay. And after the creation also, all the living beings will merge into him. Okay. So it's Adi and Anta. He's both. He's the start. He's given before the start of the creation, and he's the ultimate end also. And he is the original personality of Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about the manifestation of this universe. Okay. And then he explains what actually this means. Living beings merging into the Supreme Lord. And he says in both annihilations, okay, there are two annihilations. One is when Lord Brahma goes to sleep during every day. Okay. Or rather every night he goes to sleep. And then at the end of Brahma's 100 years. So, the material energy called Mahatattva and the marginal energy called the Jiva Tattva merge into the person of the Supreme Lord. The living beings remain asleep within the body of the Lord until there is another creation of the material world. And that is the way of creation, maintenance and annihilation of the material manifestation. So, the living beings remain asleep within the body of the Lord, but they don't lose their individuality. Okay, so that never happens. So even though it's mentioned merging, but merging means that they are there and they always remain there. They always remain as individual. From Bhagavad Gita also. It's not much to speak about here. Then this whole purport speaks about material creation by Mahavishnu, okay, which we will not go into. The merging of the living beings into the body of Mahavishnu takes place automatically at the end of Brahma's 100 years. But that does not mean that the individual living being loses his identity, and it also does not mean that he got liberated. Okay, so because he is merging into the body of Mahavishnu does not mean that he got liberated. Okay, when the next creation happens, when Mahavishnu breathes again, they'll again get into this material realm. Okay, so unless and until one's consciousness is completely purified, okay, he cannot get liberated from this material world. Even though he might go and merge into the body of Mahavishnu and he'll be sleeping there, but still no liberation for him. Okay. And the living beings remain merged in the body of Mahavishnu during the period of annihilation, but as soon as there is another creation, they arise to take up their unfinished work. Which is basically enjoying or trying to enjoy this material world. That is their unfinished work. Okay. And the Lord is beyond the creation. So Shri Krishna, which we discuss. At the time of devastation, the destruction is not complete because the ignorance of the jivas has not been destroyed. Therefore, it is said that at that time there is destruction of the identification of the jivas. Sputa Shaktishu. Okay, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's comment. And he says that devastation does not destroy the ignorance of the jivas. The ignorance of the jivas still remains. Okay, but no, and that's the reason why during the next creation he again comes back. If the ignorance is destroyed, he does not come back. Text 22. The personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, the living entities, placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about this Nitya Mukta and Nitya Baddha. And he says those who are Nitya Muktas, they are engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord. Okay, that's simple. Nitya Baddhas are entrusted to his external energy, Maya, for rectification of their rebellious attitude toward the Supreme Father. Okay. Bewildered by the illusory energy, they think they are products of matter, and thus they are very busy in making plans in the material world for becoming happy. And it's all under the influence of illusory energy. So there's no question of them becoming happy, and all their plans will always fail. The plan is to become happy, but they'll never become happy. That basically means the plan always will fail. Okay, the plan will always fail. They'll never become happy. And this verse also has this word bhuya, which means again and again. Bhutva bhutva praliyate. Srila Prabhupada also says this in Bhagavad Gita, that they come again and again to enjoy this material world. But this repeated chance for reformation also. The living beings who are constitutionally the parts and parcels of the Lord and are forgetful of the sweet relation are given a chance again and again to get rid of the clutches of the external energy and to revive the living being's consciousness. The Lord also creates the revealed scriptures. So both the things are going on. They get chance for sense enjoyment also. So that's repeated, bhuta bhuta praliyate, that's there. But it's also a chance for reformation. So choice is always there for the living entity. What he wants to do. Whether he wants to be in the material world trying to enjoy it, or whether he wants to purify himself and reform himself and go back to Godhead. Okay, so choice is there. But they are not aware of the choice. The living entities are not aware of this choice. They only think that they have only one choice, that is to enjoy this material world. But the pure devotee, when he comes, then by his association, he tells them that they have a choice, that they can do one of these two things. And they must do this particular thing, which is cultivating pure devotional service. Okay. Otherwise, normal conditioned soul, because of the sinful propensity to enjoy this material world, they completely do away with the whole idea of following the dharmic life. Okay. And finally, he speaks about false name and false forms. Okay. So modern nationalism is the culmination or conclusion of such false names and false forms. Men are mad after false names and forms. The form of body, so Srila Prabhupada was basically differentiating between the form and the name. So he says the form of body obtained under certain conditions is taken up as factual, because the living entity thinks he is this body. Okay. And the name also taken bewilders the conditioned soul into misusing the energy in the name of so many isms. Form is something which can be seen. We all have condition. We all have this material form is something which can be seen. But names and other things are just ideas or concepts and designations. Okay. So one thing, the living entity is already bewildered because of the form. He thinks he is his body. And because of that bewilderment, he also accumulates so many names. I belong to this particular country. I belong to this particular community. I like this particular political party. This particular political party's ideology. I am a follower of communism, socialism, feudism, imperialism, capitalism. So many isms are there. So they identify themselves. One is the identification with the gross body and identification with the subtle ideas also. Okay, thinking that all this will be a proper instruments. All these are proper instruments for reforming this world and making people happy in this world. But both are illusory. One cannot satisfy himself through his body. At the same time, one cannot feel happiness or satisfaction also through these different ideas, which Srila Prabhupada writes here as isms. So both are not possible. So therefore, they are false names and false forms. So both are false because nothing is constitutional position, or it's not related to the nature of the soul. And anyway, the nature of the soul is not even being spoken about when a person is bewildered because of his form and because of the various names he assigns himself to. Okay. Yeah. Text 23. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and senses. And that is the only way to purify one's existence. So there is this false form and false names, okay, which is spoken about in the previous verse. And here, the same Supreme Lord, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness. So the form of the Lord is experienced, and those devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness also understand their form, okay, their Swarupa, by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and senses. And that is the only way to purify one's existence from all kinds of names or isms. Okay, you purify yourself. So controlling the senses to know the Lord, we have already discussed this. Okay. Srila Prabhupada speaks how this mechanical process or artificial yogic process to control the senses is a failure. Okay. But when the senses are engaged in more attractive activities, there is no chance of their being attracted by inferior engagements. Anything done in the service of the Lord becomes at once purified of its material nature. So senses should be engaged in superior engagement, okay, which is in relation to the Lord. Inferior engagements will always contaminate. Okay. The Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after a prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs. But the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all, which basically means, like, over a due course of hearing from pure devotee over a long period of time, okay, prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs, then the Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart. The heart becomes purified of this learned person, and the process ends when he accepts Vasudeva as all in all, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Okay. Yeah, these are straightforward purports. Okay, nothing complicated here. Oh dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead whose attractive and confidential pastimes are described in the confidential parts of the Vedic literature by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains and annihilates the material world and yet remains unaffected. Okay. And Srila Prabhupada, this purport is also quite straightforward. Srila Prabhupada just makes the point that in Vedanta Sutra Upanishad there is only a hint of the confidential parts of his pastimes. In such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads, the Lord has expressively been distinguished from the mundane conception of his existence. And this is required because people normally, in the conditioned stage, natural, well, you cannot say unnatural, but conditioned state, it looks very natural to be related to this body. Okay. And anything that we see, we perceive or we hear about, we have the tendency to think that that is also mundane. So the Upanishads basically clarify or distinguish expressively that this mundane conception should not be used to understand the Lord's pastimes. Okay, because these pastimes are mentioned in the Puranas also, and even in some parts of the Vedic literatures, it's there. But when we see, when we hear of those pastimes, we should not think that this is also about a human being who has performed some of these pastimes, and it is attainable by a human being. So therefore, this concept or this mention is there in the Upanishads at many places that whatever the Lord does not have a mundane form but a spiritual form. His name, chanting of his name is not mundane, it is spiritual, like this. Basically, they don't speak much about the name, but speak about his form specifically. Okay. But the problem with the impersonalists or the Mayavadis is that even though they claim themselves to be students of Vedanta Sutra or Upanishads, okay, they cannot distinguish that the Lord's form is actually not mundane, it is spiritual. They think the Lord's form is mundane. So that is where they are covered, which Srila Prabhupada used to say, this merging with the Lord, or this Maya, this last snare of Maya. Right? So Maya is illusory energy. So they think that they are getting liberated from the illusory energy, but they have been completely taken up or swallowed up by the snake of illusory energy. Because they think that after all their study, all their cultivating of jnana, all kinds of austerity, what they ultimately come to is that the Lord's form is mundane. That's their conclusion after all their study, which basically means everything that they have done is totally useless. Okay, so that's the last snare of Maya. They're totally covered by the illusory energy of the Lord. Whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest mode of existence, the Lord, in his transcendental form, manifests his supreme power, the truth positive, shows special mercy to the faithful, and performs wonderful activities. He thus manifests various transcendental forms in different periods and ages as necessary. Okay, so this starts a new section where these ladies, these are the ladies who are speaking all these verses. So they say that the same Krishna has appeared to engage in his transcendental pastimes. Okay, and when does he come? He comes when the kings and administrators are living like animals in the lowest mode of existence. And this is the reason why Krishna came. Because Mother Bhumi, she prayed to Lord Brahma, and then all the demigods went to Shvetadip to pray to the Lord, so that he comes and removes the burden of this world. So the kings and administrators were living like animals. So the Lord, in his transcendental form, he manifests his supreme power, okay, and he incarnates himself. He shows special mercy to the faithful and then performs wonderful activities also. So he does these three things. No? He manifests supreme power, he shows mercy to the devotees, and he performs wonderful activities. Okay. Yes. So we have already discussed these points in the previous chapter and previous verses also, that the whole creation is the absolute property of the Lord. Okay, and this maladministration by ignorant and irresponsible kings also. Okay. Srila Prabhupada gives some more details, and he says that nepotism, bribery, cheating, aggression, and therefore famine, epidemic, war, and similar other disturbing features become prominent in human society. And the devotees of the Lord or the faithful are persecuted by all means. And this is one of the reasons why Lord appears to restore dharma in this material world. Okay. So the material world is created to satisfy the whims of the Nitya-Baddhas or everlastingly conditioned souls, just as playing cradles are provided for naughty boys. Otherwise, there was no need of the material world. Okay. Yes. So this is one thing. Okay. Here, Srila Prabhupada writes that it is created, the material world is created to satisfy the whims of the Nitya-Baddhas. But from the previous verses and previous purport, we also understand that it's a reformative place, a place for reformation, and the living entities are given chance again and again to reform themselves. Okay, so that is also there. So both are there, as we discussed. And he performs superhuman activities, which means that no one can imitate him. So therefore, he is called as Asamurdhva. Nobody can imitate him. Okay. Oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. Okay. Yeah. It's called by crawling. Chankramanena basically means, when he was in Mathura, he was born in Mathura with the same Lord in his child form. He was crawling around in his childhood. So again, Srila Prabhupada speaks about appearance of Krishna and compares that to the sun. That the sun rises on the eastern horizon, but that does not mean that the eastern horizon is the parent of the sun. Similarly, when Krishna appears or when he is born in the virtuous land of Mathura, that does not mean that he is actually taking birth just like a normal person. He is just like the sun, just like sometimes it's told that east direction gives birth to the sun, because we see the sun from the east direction. But east direction is not giving birth to the sun. The sun is already there. It just rises from the east. The same way the Lord also rises or takes birth. Liberation is obtainable after many births and after great endeavor with patience and perseverance and with knowledge and renunciation. But simply by knowing in truth about the Lord's transcendental births and activities, one can get liberation at once. Okay, so Vishwanath Thakur comments on this, that how can the birth and activities be eternal? Those are actions, and any action or its part has a beginning or an end. Without beginning and end, there will be a deficiency in the very nature of action. So no, this is not a fault. Since the Lord has unlimited forms at all times, he has unlimited manifestations. Because of that, he has unlimited pastimes of birth and activities. So what it means is, when we speak about actions, an action means it has a start and it concludes. It has a beginning and it has an end. Okay, an activity. But in case of the Supreme Lord, his activities don't have a start and end because they're unlimited. So there is no start and end for his activities, and they're continuously going on. So when something is continuously going on and it does not have, and they're unlimited in nature, it does not have a start and an end. So therefore, Krishna's activities cannot be constrained into this mundane activity, the mundane definition of activity. This is the point. Srila Prabhupada continues and he says, if simply by knowing the transcendental nature of the birth and activities of the Lord one can get liberation easily, we can just imagine what is in store for those who actually enjoyed the company of the Lord in person, as a family member or as a neighbor. Okay, yeah. So these are all simple purports. I have already discussed these things before. Undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dwarka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dwarka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glances at them and favors them with sweet smiles. So now they're speaking about the fortune of the Dwarkavasis. Okay, because they have defeated the glories of the heavenly planets, and because the inhabitants of Dwarka are seeing the soul of all living beings, or Krishna, in his loving feature every day. To see the personal form of Krishna is very, very rare. Okay, I think it comes in this purport. Yeah, we will see. To see Krishna in his personal form is extremely rare. Okay, it's very difficult. Okay, and Srila Prabhupada writes that celebrity of heavenly planets is defeated by Dwarka. Because the Lord is the soul of all living beings, and He desires always to have all the living beings in their Swarupa, in their constitutional position, to participate in transcendental life in His association. His attractive features and sweet smiles go deep into the heart of everyone, and once it is so done, the living being is admitted into the kingdom of God from which no one returns. So this opportunity to have, to see the attractive features of the Lord, okay, to experience the sweet smiles of the Lord, okay, and to associate with Him intimately is available to the Dwarkavasis. And what is the result of that? The result of that is that the living beings admitted into the kingdom of God from which no one returns. But this opportunity is not available to those in the heavenly planets. Right? It's not available to those in the heavenly planets. So that's why 3 places, namely Vrindavan, Mathura and Dwaraka, are more important than the famous planets within the universe, because Krishna personally came. Okay. Srila Prabhupada continues and he says, heavenly planets are also miserable. Not only this earth, but also all other planets of the universe are places of misery. Because in none of the planets within the universe are there eternal life, eternal bliss and eternal knowledge. Any person engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is recommended to live in one of the above mentioned 3 places, namely Dwarka, Mathura or Vrindavan. Because devotional service in these 3 places is magnified, those who go there to follow the principles in terms of instructions imparted in the revealed scriptures surely achieve the same result as obtained during the presence of Lord Sri Krishna. So, Mathuravas is very important. One of the important principles. To come back to about it. Oh friends, just think of his wives, whose hands he has accepted. How they must have undergone vows, taken baths, and performed fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips by kissing. The damsels of Brajabhumi would often faint just by expecting such favors. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about Swarupa and the Madhurya Rasa. He says liberation means the renovation of the stage of Swarupa, which is the factual identity of the living being. The Lord is always perfect in himself, and thus he has no hankering for himself. He, however, becomes a master, a friend, a son, or husband to fulfill the intense love of the devotee concerned. So this we discussed, we discussed during when we were discussing this Bhishma's pastimes, his prayers, that Krishna is complete in himself. Okay, he is complete. But only for the sake of reciprocation with his devotees, he manifests different moods as he becomes a master, or he becomes a friend, he becomes a son or husband to fulfill the intense love of the devotee concerned. Okay, so he exhibits these qualities just for the sake of his devotees. Srila Prabhupada speaks about the 2 stages of this Madhurya Rasa. One is Swakiya and Parakiya. And and he says that these girls, who are in the Parakiya relationship, the wives of Krishna who are in the Parakiya relationship, they underwent severe penances by taking vows, bathing, and offering sacrifices in the fire, as prescribed in the scriptures. So bathing means not just normal bathing, okay. Bathing means with some particular vows. Okay, you bathe for these many days during this particular muhurta, with these particular items. So there are vows that are taken for bathing. Okay. And offering sacrifice in the fire as prescribed in the scriptures. Each and every living being has his individual position In one of the above mentioned 5 different kinds of reciprocating means with the Lord, and one's pure spiritual form of Swarupa, the relation becomes manifest without mundane affinity. Okay. The stage is earned after many lives of penance, but by the mercy of our acharyas, it's possible in one lifetime. They have told us. The children of these ladies are Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama and Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from their Swayamvara ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Shishupala. And other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasura and thousands of his assistants. All of these ladies are glorious. Okay, because the glory of these women, or those who became the wives of Krishna, for them, it's not that they were making an endeavor, or they were there and they were making an endeavor to marry Krishna. Krishna himself came and he kidnapped them, okay, in front of so many other men, showing interest in these women, as if that he is desiring them. But Krishna is Atmanama, he does not have mundane desires. Okay, but as if desiring them, he fulfilled their reciprocation or their desire of being accepted by Krishna like this. So that way, these ladies are very glorious because of all the austerities and penances, or their desire is so intense, and because of their purity, Krishna himself, he came and he kidnapped all these women and married them. Srila Prabhupada speaks about Swayamvara and the transcendental household life of Krishna. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives despite their being without independence or purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone at home. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. Okay, so this is how he acted. So that's why these women glorified their lives despite their being without independence or our purity. So women, merchants and laborers are not very intelligent, and thus it is very difficult for them to understand the science of God or to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. They are more materialistic, and less than them are the Kiratas, Hunas, Andhras, Pulindas, Pulkashas, Abhiras, Kankas, Yavanas, Khasas, etc. But all of them can be delivered if they are properly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. So, it's specifically mentioned here that women, merchants and laborers are not very intelligent. And the reason for that is that it's very difficult for them to understand the science of God or to be engaged in devotional service of the Lord. Okay. So because they have attained that kind of form, because of their nature, it is difficult for them to understand the science of God. So therefore, they are called as less intelligent. It's more of the conditioning. Okay. Because of this, and that is probably the reason why these women are also called as their being without independence, obviously, and without much purity also. Okay. From a mundane point of view, or from this materialistic point of view, women are naturally attracted to materialistic enjoyment. Okay. So that way, but still, they glorified their own lives because the Supreme Lord never left them alone, and it pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. Their sincerity of purpose made them at once pure by virtue of devotion. But these women, because their purpose was sincere, they became pure by virtue of their devotion. If, therefore, anyone desires the Lord to become one's husband, the Lord fulfills such desires in full. Okay. So, the last prayer, or the last glorification. While the ladies of the capital, Hastinapur, were greeting him and talking in this way, the Lord, smiling, accepted their good feelings, and casting the grace of his glance over them, he departed from the city. So Vishnu Shabda comments, by his glances he pleased the women who had Shantarati, and by his smiles he pleased those with Madhurya Bhava. Okay. So it basically means that he reciprocated with each of them accordingly. Okay. So he knew that who is speaking what, and then he departed the city. Okay. So 32 to 56, the process of Krishna's departure is mentioned. Maharaj Yudhishthira, although no one's enemy, engaged 4 divisions of defense: horse, elephant, chariot, and army to accompany Lord Krishna, the enemy of the asuras, demons. The Maharaja did this because of the enemy and also out of affection for the Lord. Okay. Maharaj Yudhishthira knew well that Krishna is everyone's friend and well-wisher, and yet there were asuras who were by nature envious of the Lord. So out of fear of attack from others and out of affection also, he engaged all varieties of defensive forces as bodyguards of Lord Krishna. Primarily it is because out of affection, because Yudhishthira Maharaj does know, and as Prabhupada writes here, that if required, Lord Krishna himself was sufficient to defend himself from the attack of others who counted the Lord as his enemy, but still he accepted all the arrangements made by Maharaj Yudhishthira because he could not disobey the king who was his elder cousin, and because of affection for Maharaj Yudhishthira also. And it's mentioned, Maharaj Yudhishthira is nobody's enemy. He is Ajatashatru, but people thought of him as an enemy. So that's why this is because the Lord or the Maharaj did this because of the enemy, which are mentioned as asuras here, and also out of affection for the Lord. So even though Maharaj Yudhishthira was not thinking of anybody as his enemy, there were people who thought Maharaj Yudhishthira as their enemies. The basic principle for all transcendental exchanges between the Lord and his devotees is exhibited to enjoy a transcendental bliss for which there is no comparison. So this is the reason for all these pastimes. Out of profound affection for Lord Krishna, the Pandavas, who were of the Kuru dynasty, accompanied him a considerable distance to see him off. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, persuaded them to return home, and he proceeded towards Dwarka with his dear companions. Okay, so this we have seen, this we have heard in multiple instances where when a great personality is leaving a particular kingdom, then citizens also follow him to quite some distance and then they come back. Okay, so this happened when Ramchandra left for the forest. Okay, and there are many other instances also like this. O Shaunaka, the Lord then proceeded towards Kurujangala, Panchala, Shurasena, the land on the bank of the river Yamuna, Brahmavarta, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Saraswata, the province of the desert and the land of the scanty water. After crossing these provinces, he gradually reached the Saubira and Abhira provinces, and then west of these reached Dwarka at last. So this Prabhupada gives more geographical details on this, and he said which all places Krishna travelled. He travelled through Delhi, Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Saurashtra and Gujarat, and at last reached his home province of Dwarka. And he also went to the provinces of Rajasthan and the province of scanty water like Madhya Pradesh, and they were there even 5,000 years before, he says. Okay, so text 36. On his journey through these provinces, he was welcomed, worshipped, and given various presentations. In the evening, in all places, the Lord suspended his journey to perform evening rites. This was regularly observed after sunset. Prabhupada again clarifies, and he says the Lord observed the religious principles regularly while he was on the journey. Thus, there are certain philosophical speculations that even the Lord is under the obligations of futile action. But he has no obligatory duty. Still, he does everything so that others may follow. He is self-sufficient, and yet he acts according to the rulings of the revealed scripture in order to teach us the process. If he does not do so, the common man may go wrong. Okay. So these things have been discussed in Bhagavad Gita already. Conclusively, Srila Prabhupada says that the most powerful can do something which is all good, but our imitation of such acts will put us into endless difficulty. Therefore, in all actions, the experienced guide, the spiritual master, who is the manifest mercy of the Lord, should always be consulted, and the path of progress will be assured. Okay. So this way, Krishna left for Dwarka. Okay. And we saw that Shaunaka Rishi initially he asked how Maharaj Yudhishthira ruled. Okay. After getting instructions from Bhishma. So we saw Suta Goswami replies that in the first 6 verses, and then he speaks about Krishna starting for Dwaraka and the separation, the intense affliction which arose in the citizens of Hastinapur because of the separation, and how they honored Krishna. So how a great personality should be honored, how the Supreme Lord should be honored. So this is Krishna starts for Dwaraka, and from 20 to 31 the words or the speech of or the glorification of Krishna by the ladies of Hastinapur is mentioned. Okay, so and this is also mentioned how they describe about the supremacy of Krishna, how he enters or how he comes to perform his transcendental pastimes and the most fortunate wives of Krishna, and then finally Krishna departs. Okay, so this chapter is simple or simpler than the previous 2 chapters, comparatively speaking. The next chapter is Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwaraka. Okay. So at this point, if we see the flow of chapters in the first canto, see the main subject matter or the narration. Okay, it starts from the appearance of Sri Narada. Actually, the narration is there from the the first chapter itself, about they performing sacrifices. Shaunaka Rishi is performing sacrifice, Suta Goswami coming and speaking about Srimad Bhagavatam, and there were multiple questions that were asked which were answered in the 2nd and 3rd chapter. And further, more questions were asked in the 4th chapter, and then from then on the conversation starts. Okay. So questions were asked about, we saw this, right? The questions were asked about Srimad Bhagavatam, about Shukdev Goswami, and about Maharaj Parikshit. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So this was asked. Then about Srimad Bhagavatam, Suta Goswami starts speaking about how Narada instructed Vyasadeva to compile Srimad Bhagavatam, the conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva, and then he continues about basically this are preludes to the appearance of Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, so one is the son of Drona punished. First he was punished, okay, and then again he shot a Brahmastra, which was going to affect Maharaj Parikshit. So Maharaj Parikshit was saved. So all this chapter was in relation to Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, but then it went to prayers of Queen Kunti. It took a detour. When he was speaking about all these things, then Suta Goswami he speaks about the devotees who were there. So how Kunti Maharani prayed to the Lord. Okay, and then what happened? So he went into that narration. Okay, and then he spoke also about Bhishma Deva's prayers, and then how Krishna left for Dwaraka, and then how Krishna will enter into Dwaraka. Okay, so once that is done, then Shaunaka Rishi will again ask, what about Maharaj Parikshit? Okay, so then it comes back on track. Okay, so there is a detour. Okay, and then it comes back on track, saying, okay, now we'll speak about the birth of Emperor Parikshit. So from that, it again starts. Okay, so now if you see, we should not go here, but 12th chapter, if you see, Shaunaka said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invisible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwatthama, which was discussed in 8th chapter. Okay, but Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. So he's now again indicating Suta Goswami, and now he starts speaking about Maharaj Parikshit. We want to hear about him. So these chapters, the prayers by Queen Kunti, Bhishma Deva's chapter, prayers of Bhishma Dev, departure of Lord Krishna for Dwaraka, and Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwaraka, is basically, Suta Goswami, when he starts speaking about the Lord, he's only speaking about the glorification, the praise of the Lord. He goes into that mode. Okay. Now Shaunaka Rishi brings him back, saying, okay, let's speak about Parikshit Maharaj and how Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken. So from this 12th chapter onwards, it will be specifically about Maharaj Parikshit and all the activities that transpired. The Dhritarashtra has to quit home, and the instruction Vijayadhara gave to Dhritarashtra, and how after that Krishna disappeared, then Pandavas also retired, and then Parikshit Maharaj was made as the king. Okay, that's the flow of the chapter. Okay, so we have 5 minutes, so we can just see the breakup of 11th chapter. Okay. Yeah. So first 10 verses is Krishna entering into Dwaraka and how he was welcomed by the citizens of Dwaraka. Okay. From 11 to 15, the city of Dwaraka is described. So when someone enters into Dwaraka, what he sees the city of Dwaraka and how it's decorated, like that. So it's like we are also entering into Dwaraka along with Krishna. So when we Krishna enters, then how he's received by the citizens of Dwarka, we experience that. Then we also see how the whole city has been decorated so nicely, as Krishna is seen. Okay. Then how Krishna is received by his friends and elders, and how he reciprocated with them. Okay. Then from 24 to 27, this most attractive form of Krishna is mentioned, and 28 and 29 verse discusses how many mothers of Krishna, how they related with Krishna when they saw him first. And from 30 to 33 is Krishna's dealings with the queens, how they received him and how he reciprocated with them. And finally the transcendental activities and position of Krishna. So it's like this, we are traveling along with Krishna into the Dwarka and we are experiencing all these things. When Krishna enters, then what do the citizens do? Okay, how the city of Dwarka looked like, how his friends and elders, how they received him, how Krishna reciprocated, and how Krishna is considered as the most attractive, how they saw Krishna when he entered to Dwarka, how the mothers related with Krishna, how the wives of Krishna related with him. And finally, the transcendental activities and position of Krishna is explained in this chapter. Okay. So Suta Goswami said, this is text 1 of 11th chapter, Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwarka. Suta Goswami said, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of the Anarthas, Dwarka, the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival and apparently pacifying the dejection of the inhabitants. Okay, so now what Krishna has done is basically he has made the citizens of Hastinapur dejected, and now he is going to remove the dejection of the inhabitants of Dwarka. Okay, so as soon as he came, or as soon as he was about to enter the city, he blew his conch shell, okay, heralding his arrival. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about the eternal associates of the Lord, and he says the inhabitants of the city of Dwarka were in a mood of dejection and expected the arrival of the Lord at any moment, because they knew that the battle of Kurukshetra is complete, the war is over, okay, and Krishna's responsibilities there are also over. So the Lord can be expected at any moment. Okay. So the heralding sound of the auspicious conch shell was very encouraging, and apparently the sound pacified their dejection. Okay. They were extremely aspirant to see the Lord amongst themselves, and all of them became alert to receive him in the befitting manner. These are the signs of spontaneous love of Godhead. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, and he says, in the 11th chapter, Krishna arriving at Dwarka is praised by the inhabitants. Krishna meets with his friends and satisfies his wives. So it's just a normal narration of what actually happens when Krishna enters. The white and fat boweled conch shell, being gripped by the hand of Lord Krishna and sounded by him, appeared to be reddened by the touch of his transcendental lips. It seemed that a white swan was playing in the stems of red lotus flowers. Okay. Fat boweled means a conch shell whose this belly is quite big. Okay, that's fat boweled. Okay. And look very beautiful. Because if you see a swan's body is also like that. Okay, and when they're playing with the lotus flowers, it just looks like that. Krishna's lips are just like lotus, and the white conch shell, which was fat bowled, it looked just like a swan. Okay, and it also appeared to be reddened. You can just imagine, just think of that. This conch shell. Conch shell is always white. Okay, but by the touch of Krishna's lips, it started tinging towards red. It changed its nature. Okay. So amazing. The Lord is present in every particle of all existence, and he can manifest his presence from anything and everything, according to the spiritual enlightenment of the devotee. By spiritual contact with the Lord, everything becomes spiritually reddened, like the conch shell in the grip of the Lord. And the Paramahamsa, or the supremely intelligent person, plays the part of the ducking swan in the water of spiritual bliss, eternally decorated by the lotus flower of the Lord's feet. Okay, so this is poetic. So Paramahamsa, what he does is, he plays the part of a ducking swan. He becomes a swan in the water of spiritual bliss. Means basically he's very happy because he's eternally decorated by the lotus flower of the Lord's feet, which is also reddish in color. Correct? There's reddish tinge in the Lord's feet also. The citizens of Dwarka, having heard that sound which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run towards him fast, just to have a long desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all devotees. Okay, so anxiety in separation. All were very anxious to have an audience with the Lord. Although, because of spiritual contact, they were never separated from the Lord. Srila Prabhupada also writes, the citizens of Dwarka who lived at the time of Lord Krishna's presence there were all liberated souls who descended there along with the Lord as his entourage. Okay, and when the Krishna entered and they came to know that Krishna has entered, they started running towards him. Okay, so this is when a baby is small, or when a child, 3-4 years old, a child, okay, and someone comes from a trip after a long time, they start running towards the parent. Okay, or even when the spiritual master comes, devotee starts running to have darshan of him. Okay, so it's like that. Without Krishna, the world is enveloped in darkness, just like Dwarka was enveloped in darkness. Okay. So all the citizens of Dwarka awoke from a state of slumber because of the sunrise of Krishna. And when Krishna was not there, it looked as if the whole world is enveloped in darkness. Okay. Then Srila Prabhupada speaks about the fear problem. And he says, out of the 4 problems of material existence, namely the food problem, the shelter problem, the fear problem, and the mating problem. It is ahara, nidra, bhaya, maita. Okay, these 4. The fear problem, bhaya, gives us more trouble than the others. We are always fearful due to our ignorance of the next problem. It's a very important statement. Our fearfulness is because we are never aware what is going to happen in future. Fearfulness happens because we don't know what is going to come or what is going to happen in future. Okay, so that creates fear. The whole material existence is full of problems, and thus the fear problem is always prominent. And because the material existence is always full of problems, okay, and we do not know what kind of problem is going to come, therefore we are always fearful that something might happen. Okay. So this is due to our association with the illusory energy of the Lord, known as Maya or external energy. So this fearfulness is there because whatever problems happen, it happens on the material level. Okay, on the material level, to the material body or to our material relatives, like this. So this fear is also because of illusion. Yet all fear is vanished as soon as there is a sound of the Lord represented by his holy name. Okay, so which basically means that whenever this is discussion about Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, about the Lord, or whenever Sankirtan is going on, nobody should be actually fearful. Okay, nobody should be fearful. Srila Prabhupada says, the sound of the Lord represented by his holy name as it was sounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the following 16 words. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So now there is no fear. Okay. So we can take advantage of these sounds and be free from all threatening problems of material existence. Okay. So it not only solves the fear problem, it also solves all other problems of the material existence. Okay. So I think we can stop here. Do you have any questions in this? Okay. So Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.